let's talk a little more then about the community reaction in Melbourne and how the community's feeling. We're joined now by Rabbi Laibl Wolf. Rabbi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What was your reaction when you heard that this synagogue had been set on fire?
It was one of sadness that people can be so unfortunately negatively inclined emotionally to even to take that step. But even more sad that the political climate in Australia has deteriorated. And I do blame the leadership, despite the platitudes which were stated after the burning of the synagogue, because nothing happens in a vacuum. In other words, letting people speak hate on the street, letting people speak hate at universities, obviously lends the kind of environment that leads to the next step, which is unfortunately physical altercation and destruction of property.
Yeah, and I guess what you're saying there is, while what we've seen is horrific overnight, you perhaps weren't surprised?
Yeah. Always one is surprised by somebody taking the next step, which is so horrific. But at the same time, it's not unexpected, because after all, when you, as I said earlier, set an environment like that by appeasing those people who are stating the obvious of intended instruction, that they intend to instruct to destroy a whole country like Israel, then no wonder that they're acting in this manner of perhaps destroying a synagogue.
Rabbi, you were saying there that you feel that the leadership, our governments, have not done enough to put to bed some of this rhetoric that's been happening in the lead up to this. What would you like to see them do?
I'd like them to treat Jewish people everywhere the same way as they might treat, say, an indigenous group of students weren't allowed to attend their lectures and there was a blockade to them to enter, and those who prevented them camped outside. I think the Australian government would act immediately, overnight, bringing soldiers and everybody. Likewise, if we're a group of Muslims that were being prevented. But somehow, because it's the Jewish community, there is an anti-Semitic streak somewhere beneath the surface. It comes from illiteracy, and it comes from strong emotional dictates, and it comes from poor home modelling and a fear to state truths openly in the classroom. And I think that all contributed to it.
We've also, of course, over the past year or so been talking to the Islamic community, and they're also reporting that there have been an increase in anti-Islamic attacks that they're dealing with. I guess the big question is, how do we bring people together in Australia and not let the conflict, which is playing out in the Middle East, also tear away at our unity?
Look, we are all always very much positively inclined, and the kind of comment that you just said is a very fine one. But you first have to eradicate, and you first have to deal with the problem in a way that separates the parties and protects interest. You have to have enforcement of the law, number one, and then you have to have the right conditioning through education, beginning at home, continuing in the classroom, and then out in the streets. But if you are going to fail at enforcement, the second, third and fourth steps will not take place.
What more could we be doing in our homes and our schools then?
I think we should be talking about the fact that Hashem, God, created people, different orientations, different racial groupings, different nationalities for a reason. And the reason is because the complexity of humanity is such that we are able to learn to come together from a point of difference. If we were uniform like robots, it'd be a very boring life. And we are different from each other as a way to teach us what tolerance and mutual love can be all about.
Tonight is Shabbat, and people will usually go to synagogues for that. What would your prayer be tonight, and what would your message be to worshippers who are heading there?
I think I would like to suggest to them that they pray for strong leadership, because it does happen at the top. A leadership that will be able to not just tolerance, but practice tolerance. And therefore, unfortunate parts of the community that are, when they are very small minorities, let me add to you, they make a lot of noise because of the way the communication system and media operates. But the truth is, if they were made clear that the vast majority of the country does not want to tolerate intolerance, I think they would fade away also. And yet it's a bit like fighting a cancer. When you fight cancer...
Rabbi, I hate to interrupt. We're just losing you. Can you maybe turn around or take a few steps to the left? We've just got some bad reception all of a sudden. I would
No
just like to
problem.
hear what you've got to
No
say.
problem.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Well,
Keep going.
if you have a cancer and you go to the relevant doctors, they will try to fight the cancer. They will tell you that in fighting the cancer, some of the good cells are going to be adversely affected because they're in the same proximity. And you will say, I don't worry, I want to have the bad cells removed. Likewise in society, and likewise